The creator economy is set to hit $450 billion, yes, with a B, in 2026. And as podcasters, we're trying to monetize the show. If you have a business, you're trying to add revenue streams to make your podcast worthwhile. And podcast listeners do like and trust us, but how can you make decisions that help you stay focused on the game while you're building your memberships, your courses? All of these are questions that many podcasters have. In fact, I've been dedicating this season in talking about monetization through merch on episode with Liz Mosley and on episode 99 with sponsorship coach Justin Moore. So I am continuing in this line of thought, and I thought that the perfect person to talk to us about that is Jay Clouse. Jay is the host of Creator Science, which is one of the biggest podcasters for creators. He has built a very successful membership called The Lab. And Jay has interviewed some of the biggest names in the YouTube world and helping creators think content creation differently and what they need to consider when moving to YouTube. He has been super open about his journey. He's one of the creators that I appreciate the most because he's someone who works and operates at a high level, yet he brings this realistic approach. And he has a really interesting take on the concept of experimentation and how a mindset shift that you need to consider will actually help you grow your business faster. This episode was originally recorded back in 2023. And so not only you're going to be noticing a few differences visually, but also at the time we were recording while Jay had construction going on at his house. So I did my best to remove a lot of the construction noises, but in some instances, I couldn't really remove it. So, hey, we always talk about creating imperfect content here and how sometimes that has to be the only way to move forward. And so this interview was so good that I couldn't leave it in the bag. Also, if you're new here, I'm Anna Xavier. I'm the founder of The Podcast Space. I'm an award-winning podcast marketer and strategist, and I teach you how to leverage the podcast as the most powerful tool that you have. So, without further ado, let's dive into this podcast episode with Jay Clouse. I love your approach to talking about the creator journey and how creativity is not necessarily something that is related to being an artist and how many creators get stuck in there, including podcasters. So would you mind sharing with us what is your take on who a creator is?
I think a creator is somebody who is predominantly making content, we'll call it that, digital content, and they're making that not solely for the purpose of self-expression, but for the enjoyment and consumption of others. A lot of very specific words there, but they're chosen for a specific reason. I do think that creator is often used as shorthand for content creator. I think it expands beyond where it started, which was YouTube and video, into written content, audio content. All forms of digital content to me are fair game for identifying as a creator. And the other important thing as part of that definition is I believe that creators have their audience in mind. An artist is someone who is making out of purely self-expression. Of course, they want it to connect with people and impact them, but it's really not why they're making it. And a creator, I believe, is someone who's really got their audience in mind as the motivation for making the thing.
Yeah, and I love how much on your show you talk about, yeah, sure, you can create a podcast for self-expression, but really, if you're not giving yourself to it, if you're not being authentic, if you're not trying to solve someone's problem, is there any point of creating content, really? I mean, I guess any long-term creator will have to have a commitment to one of those two things. For you who've been creating content for many years now, you've done LinkedIn courses, you have a ton of your courses, you have memberships, you've answered a lot of your audience's questions. And so what would you say when you personally, Jay, when you're thinking about okay, I'm creating podcast episodes for my community, what are the things that you're thinking about? Because for someone who is so prolific as you are very structured, but for someone who is just lost in this, the squirrel brain creator, what would you say is an effective framework to look at content creation?
Well, I think you've got to understand who your audience is and what is their journey that you're helping them on. I think a lot about the customer avatar and the customer journey. I think that there are steps along that journey as well. So my customer avatar is somebody who wants to become a professional creator. That journey, though, starts as early as I've just become aware that a creator is a thing. Do I even want to do that? all the way to the point of, okay, this is generating money now. How do I scale that? So there are multiple stops along the way. And you can even map out along that customer journey, the emotional journey. My friend Becky Pearson, she has this really great framework that she just worked with folks in our community on to map out the emotional journey of your customers to see when people are feeling low, when they're at risk of giving up, how can we serve them and get them back above that emotional risk line? And so I have different stages for my customer. It is consideration. Do I want to be a creator? It is finding fit. I've decided that, yes, I want to be a creator, but I need to figure out how I fit within the marketplace. Then it's finding traction. I know where I can find fit, but I actually have to get people to see my stuff and pay attention to it. Going pro. Okay, people are finding my stuff. I have attention, but how do I sustain myself? And then scaling. How do I go beyond myself? I am focused mostly right now on the parts of the journey that are finding traction and going pro. And as I feel like I have accomplished what I can there in the form of creating content that serves that customer, I can branch out beyond it, either into the side of now let's scale, or let's go downstream and help people get to that point of market fit.
I'm listening and processing it like 1,000% what you're saying, because so many creators in general, I feel like they skip through every phase. Is just like, I just want to create something. I just want to be part of the creator world. I had some notes here, like the digital course industry is growing like the next 3 years to like $450 billion. And so many people are like, I just want to be out there. I want to create content to be seen to then sell something. And I feel that for people who really want to be in the long game, I think that just making money with it is not necessarily like the right angle. So for you, when you're creating your podcast interviews, when you're creating your newsletter, of course, these come from questions that you've gotten from your community for a long time. You do a lot of experimentation and you talk a lot about the things that go right and the things that go wrong. So that's one of the things that I appreciate about your content is that, you know, there's a lot of messy middle that we see in your content. And I love it. And so many podcasters shy away from showing that like middle because they are afraid of being perceived as someone who isn't as knowledgeable, right? Like, oh, God forbid that we showcase as someone who is still trying to figure things out. So in one of your most recent episodes, you were talking about how I think you were about to release the podcast episode, and then your videographer was like, actually, hang on a minute, I don't want to release this because I want to create a lot of more resources. And you stopped and you were like, you know what, let's give it another week. And I was like, I freaking love this because it comes from a place of authenticity. You're not hiding away who you are. And so much of the process connects deeper with everyone as a human when we're like, yeah, like he's still figuring out. And look at him, he's like making $500,000 with your content and all of your different revenues. So as someone who creates content to an incredible standard, how do you feel when you're creating content that is like that, a little more raw, a little more authentic, and on the personal side?
Nervous is the honest answer. Like there definitely is a sense of, well, I am aware that people look at what I am doing and say, Jay's got it figured out. And that's part of the allure of my content is people want to look to people who have answers. So how much can I show of my insecurity, uncertainty, failure, and still maintain the trust that ultimately I can help you? So anytime I share something like that, it kind of feels like I'm undermining myself a little bit, but I feel like it's useful. And I can't go out every week and everything I post be like this nervous, insecure thing, or people are just gonna be like, this makes me feel worse. So
right.
there's a balance. But I mean, it's a little nerve-wracking. I think as I become more secure and more respected in the space, I have more and more appetite for that because I feel like it's harder for me to meaningfully lose that traction. But it's still scary.
It's something funny because I'm a trained journalist and then I moved into podcasting, all odd jobs, and then digital marketing. And I've noticed, because I just observe the online world and how people communicate. And for the past, I would say probably since the pandemic, we've been experiencing a shift where even bigger players are showcasing that humanity and people love it. So maybe prior to the pandemic, people were like, no, I want you to show me the picture perfect life, that you have all the answers. And part of the appeal with with a podcast, it can be to really showcase a more intimate view of your life as the process unfolds and everything. And so we are attracted to our humanity. So I will just give you listener feedback. I love every time you're being honest, because you don't just talk about things. You give us the context. You're like, hey, I did this because of this. And your thought process ensures that, yeah, you're not just like slacking out of the blue. All right, like Jay is like in this phase where in his era, now people are like the Taylor Swift era, that he's just like, eh. So I definitely love, and it always is so insightful to see it from people who are like big creators, to show that, let's try something different. And I don't know it, but let's see.
Well, that's validating. I appreciate that feedback, because it is scary. And sometimes I'm like, am I turning people off by sharing some of this? I don't know. I want to be human, more human. Even right now, like, I started to get so bored with my own content on social media in particular, especially Twitter, because I was just like, I was making things that I thought were shareable and viral potentially, and the algorithm changed and I got bored with it. And it's like, I don't even care. I'm not going to try to engineer growth on this platform right now. I think I'm just going to try to have this be like a personal conversation space. And, growth is slower. It's different. You have to look for different signals of progress and different signs of success. And for me, I've been pondering this open question of like, well, what's enough? Because there's not necessarily a correlation between audience size and direct impact of what you're measuring. Like, maybe it's revenue that you're measuring, maybe it's trust, maybe it's impact, maybe it's relationships. Audience growth does not equal that directly. And so I started thinking, I'm not in a bad place from an audience standpoint. What if I just tried to lean more into what makes my perspective different and what makes my opinions different, and see how that goes? And it's been enjoyable, at least. I don't know if it's been more effective. I can't say definitively like, hey, screw all growth advice, just follow your heart. But it's been more enjoyable. And so I think that's fine for a season.
Yeah, it got me thinking what you were saying. When you were talking about what before worked, then didn't, and now you have to adapt, apart from the fact that you now have to be way more intentional about which platform you have to choose to be on, and mainly like, do you really enjoy the platform? That actually burns out a lot of creators that I talk to, because they say, hey, I am so done with like having to figure out like what to do next. It's like, give me one formula. And that's when I'm like, well, the formula is being you. I feel like personally on your podcast, on your social media, do things like take like inspiration from what you see and try to create something that you enjoy. Suddenly you were being seen and people were talking to you and engaging with your content. Suddenly like it's like crickets, and you're like, I did nothing wrong. Like, why? It's like toxic boyfriend energy.
Yeah.
So do you see that's something that gets creators or yourself even a little like kind of like again?
Yes, and we still have to go back to that definition of creator that I had in the beginning, which is you have to have your audience in mind. So yes, be you, but do it in a way that is useful, if not helpful, to the person that will see it on the other side. Because if you're just being you and there's not a through line or cohesion to why I followed you in the first place, what I'm looking for from you, then it's not really helpful, and it will probably not work long term. So you have to make sure that there's still this through line of, what am I doing for people? In some season of life, it might be, I am teaching people. In other seasons of life, it might be, I am inspiring people or encouraging people. Like right now, I've really come to believe that more than advice, people need encouragement a lot of times. But again, if you're just out there like shouting, encouraging aphorism, that starts to get a little bit old too. And it's like, okay, I get it. I'm inspired. I'm willing to do this, but how do I do it? You got to have a balance. And it doesn't have to be like, one post is this, the next post is that, but over the long term, as someone is following your journey, there needs to be a balance of, this is encouraging and it's helpful.
Right. What is your mission overall? And the delivery can change slightly. For you, you've been changing your approach to podcasting, and it's been really interesting to hear you talk about how your podcast, and again, I know this because I am a podcast strategist, but audio podcasts are not necessarily the best way to just like reach new people. That's why you need other platforms. And you've been investing a lot and talking a lot about your experimentation with YouTube. And a lot of podcasters ask me this, so I have to ask you. I know the answer, but has YouTube been worthwhile for you in your growth as a creator?
Yes, but I would say only recently do I feel that way. So let me unpack that. I agree that podcasting is not the best way to reach new audience. In fact, I think it is the worst. So let me just say, like, it's not...
Sorry, you're listening to this on a podcast.
I know. It's not the best new audience acquisition just by means of how people find a podcast in the first place. I do think it's arguably the best place for audience relationships. So it's a worthwhile pursuit. You just have to understand where it lives in your portfolio of time and effort. YouTube, it took about 13 months for us to feel like we hit an inflection point where we're seeing growth and we know what we're doing. And I don't want you to hear that and say, okay, 13 months, I can do that. You would also have to do 13 months with the amount of investment and focus that I put into it, which is probably outsized compared to most people. You know, when I do something, I do it pretty big. So I would say in the first year I invested, I can actually do some rough math here. I probably put about $50,000 or maybe a little bit more into the channel in the first year. And like I said, it took 13 months for that to pay off. So I'm paying an audio engineer, I'm paying a thumbnail artist, I'm paying a podcast or a video editor, I should say. And then all the time that I'm putting in, that's not counted in that financial figure. So it was a big investment, and it took a long time to feel like we understood what we were doing, and YouTube started to take us a little bit more seriously, and then things started to work a little bit better. Now, we've tripled the channel in the last couple of months, basically doing what we were already doing. In fact, we're actually publishing less. For most of the first year, we were publishing on a weekly basis, and now we're posting every 2 weeks. And it's because we realized that YouTube is much more of a quality game than a volume game. And we figured out how to get better at packaging the episodes so that people wanted to click on it, and how to edit the episodes so people wanted to watch through it. So these days, honestly, I am changing a lot of the business to accommodate more focus on YouTube and less on the audio-only podcast. I don't plan to stop doing the podcast, and we'll probably maintain the weekly cadence that we have now. But I'm putting more of my time and focus into the YouTube channel.
Yeah. Thank you for breaking it down for us. I understand that so many people keep asking, should I just be on YouTube? Should I go all in? Should I, buy a camera? Should I just put the audio only version? Actually, talking about that, do your audio only, your solo episodes go on YouTube too? What is the strategy for that?
Not right now. Everything on YouTube is video first. I had gotten some advice from somebody whose advice I really trust, who said, you have all these audio only episodes, you should still upload those to YouTube. He recommended not dropping them all at once and uploading like 100 episodes in audio on the same day. He said, like, drip out 1, maybe 2 a week and point them to your most recent video episode as an end card. But I haven't started doing that because I really think about the channel as a library, and I want to be really proud of the video products that live in that library. And if there's no video element, I'm not going to be as proud about that product in the library. So am I probably leaving something on the table? Yeah, probably. But I am not putting non-video, non-edited content on YouTube.
That's an interesting statement right there. Because I see your point about thinking video first. And this podcast that I do is video first. I try to be mindful of video first on a different level. By the way, those podcaster, you're listening in, and I do not create content to the standard that Jay does. Absolutely not. But I've gotten feedback from, again, different scale, but I chose to put my audio only content because I knew that there were topics that I was like, I don't have the capacity to create video, but I want them here because my focus was SEO for my website. So I was trying to combine different things, but It's interesting that you're thinking about it where you're like, really, I'm holding off from those. I guess listeners from the show, audio only, will continue to listen there. Your show is available on Spotify in video format too. So I'm sorry, I'm just like thinking out loud. I'm like, I guess that makes sense, you know?
Yeah,
People
I mean,
can
it
still
depends.
benefit from both.
It depends what you're optimizing for. I believe in a difficult to quantify idea of like legitimacy. And when I think about the optics of uploading a video that's not to our typical video standard to the channel, I think it undermines the legitimacy a little bit. And I think it's more valuable as a growing channel where I already have to fight up against my subscriber count and view counts to make it an undeniable catalog of incredible looking videos. So if people land there, their impression is like, why isn't this channel bigger? You know? So that's what I'm trying to do right now.
By the way, all the episodes that you did with a few creators on optimizing for YouTube, I'll make sure that those are included in the show notes because those episodes were just gold. And I know that our listeners will definitely want to check those out. So by the way, y'all go and check those because they were really great. So Jay, realistically, for those who want to start their journey on YouTube videos, to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about, so would you say that is good for discovery, but like think about like the long-term impact of like the brand you're trying to create content on YouTube, and look at the long-term vision of your content creation process and think, okay, do I want to create something to a standard that I may regret in the future, or it's just like that is for me my situation and everyone else is different?
I don't think that you should let your insecurities about the content prevent you from publishing it. I think you should let that fuel your interest in getting better. YouTube was the latest platform that I've joined, so I have a lot of experience in content creating outside of it. I understand what it looks like to come out of the gates operating at a pretty high level, and that's what I was interested in doing. But I think it's most important that you learn how the game works and you learn how to get better at this. And I understand most people won't be able to invest out of the gates the way that I have either. So odds are you're going to be editing your own videos, you're going to be making your own thumbnails, and you need to learn how to edit those videos well and how to make good thumbnails. And you're only going to get that by practicing. So I would encourage you to start doing that. And then as you raise your own standards, you can decide, oh, do I want these other videos to live here as an archive and an homage to where I started? Or do I want to hide these videos? Lots of channels do both of those things. So it's important to get started because you only get good by doing it. You can shortcut the process, of course, by hiring people who have done it before. And that's part of what I've done. Whatever your circumstance is, whatever resources you have at your disposal, it's most important that you learn the game, and you only do that by playing it.
I agree. Just to try to close the show, talking a little bit about gratitude and journey and progress, what would you say was like a pivotal moment for you when you were like, oh my gosh, the game has changed for me, or I didn't notice because I had my head down and suddenly I'm here and I didn't notice this happen?
There have been a lot of phases in my journey as a creator. Before being a creator, something that I think about a lot, early on in my journey, I was doing basically group coaching. And on the backside of that, I had a digital community. The program is called Unreal Collective. I did that for like 3 years. And in 2020, I started consulting with Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income. They eventually acquired that program to bring me onto the team to help them build their own community programs for a year. And the year that I worked with Pat and SPI, I still had my own content business that I was spending a significant amount of time on. That was part of the deal. I said, I'm going to keep building my content business. I had the best year of my content business that I ever had. And part of it was because I had to say no to a lot of things that I was doing the year before because I thought I needed the revenue. And by actually stopping some of those things and giving myself more time and space, I was able to create better things, create the things that I wanted to create, because that salary was actually all I needed from an income perspective. And that safety allowed me to make decisions that were ultimately better for the business. So I think about that a lot, how like actually by not doing the things that I thought I needed to do, I sped up my growth in that way. So this is a story that I like to tell folks who are thinking about taking the leap into being a creator. Maybe they're working a 9-to-5 right now. I really encourage people to take it slow and think long, because it's going to take years for this to be a good financial return. But having something else fulfilling your financial needs so you can build the business in the way that you want to build it without compromise, I think is a real gift. I hope that's encouragement to folks who are out there working on the side, building things now.
And of course, it depends on your circumstances. It depends on your financial commitments, how many people you have dependent on you, how many hours you're putting in. And I love that you were talking in one of your articles about the luck factor and how you believe is more about experimentation, consistent than luck. But I mean, I guess luck can happen. But for the listeners right now, what would you say is the one thing that you want them to focus? The one thing that it has worked for you and you believe that is something that people should write it in a sticky note and have that in front of their eyes 24/7.
It's a word I made up, and it's experimentality. You have to have a mentality of experimentation. The idea is you're only going to figure out your path by trying things, seeing how it worked, what happened, and iterating based on that. Your path is going to be yours and yours alone. You're going to have to find your own way, and you're only going to do that through experimentation. So you have to look at things as, I want this outcome. Let me try to do this to see if I get there. Well, I didn't quite get there, but here's what I learned from that. So let me try this instead and see if I get there. It's just tiny little incremental changes and improvements all along the way. And you got to be making those. This path is not about big, sweeping, fork in the road decisions. It's incremental, tiny changes, tiny improvements, and they really, really stack up over time.
I love that. And I think that is such a great reminder that, every effort that I this is the third time that I'm saying this in a podcast interview, but I truly, truly believe that we get so stuck in what, we still need to do and all of that. But everything we've built from now on, forward and past us, every single action is moving us closer. We just have no idea about the net that we're creating, right? Because we have so many what's called window shoppers, people who are witnessing our journey, who are there, online and offline too. So I love that. Awesome. Well, Jay, if the listeners thinking, oh my gosh, Jay's my man, where would you want them to go directly to find more about you?
If you like podcasts, search Creator Science in this podcast player right here. Go ahead. I'll wait. If you want to go anywhere else, just go to creatorscience.com.
Perfect. All right, Jay, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate so much of your wisdom and taking the time to talk to us, because I know you're a busy guy. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. And for you listening in, all the resources mentioned in this episode will be available on, obviously, this podcast player as well, but at thepodcastspace.com/podcast. I've been Anna Xavier, and this was the Podcast Space. So keep creating content that's imperfect but moves you forward. I'll see you on the next episode.